Welcome to Trash Talk Reverse. I'm Harry, and today we're going to be watching Season 2, Episode 4 of Game of Thrones. The last episode was the best of the show so far, so hopefully this one can either match or raise the bar. We'll probably be back with Dany and have Arya meet up with Tywin Lannister, and I expect that Littlefinger will probably get word to Catelyn about exchanging Jaime sometime soon, because I know Brienne has to go on the run after Renly's death, and Catelyn sends Jaime with her. I do suspect Renly's death is in the next episode, since I vaguely recall the Shadow Baby's birth being the end of an episode, so I guess we'll see how his death impacts the story, and if it really does end up feeling like wasted potential, or if this episode does enough to assuage that feeling that I've had so far. I also vaguely recall a scene with Jon Snow and the gang actually seeing the White Walker picking up a baby left out in the woods, like a much closer and clearer shot than what we got at the end of episode 2. Or maybe it's just the audience seeing the White Walker carry the baby somewhere. I don't necessarily think that's this episode because I feel like I definitely remember seeing them turn the baby's eyes blue as the final shot of an episode, so that might be in a later episode. But enough random speculations from my feeble memory, and let's get into this episode.
What's got to be the mountain? Our man Jaime, Loras Tyrell, better with a sword than any of them.
How good could he be? He's been stabbing Renly Baratheon for years and Renly ain't dead.
How did they know this?
The horses seem a little spooked to you. Do you hear that?
See, it's interesting how they took just like a regular conversation and then immediately turned it into something else to make things interesting. I think that's well done because they could have dragged on and on with these two. They've done this sort of thing in prior episodes where it's just two people were talking about something you literally do not care about. But again, like I was talking about 2 episodes ago, content and context. The content of the conversation isn't necessarily the most interesting thing. They're literally just talking about, oh, who would win in a fight? But it's a type of conversation that you can imagine them having. So the context makes sense as well. Like these 2 dudes are on guard duty and they're just talking to pass the time. And they didn't even stay that long with it. They gave us enough to establish the conversation, to even very generally establish these 2 characters, and now we're already moving into something suspicious going on. Interesting transition except for the shots they used. I'm sure they could have done that smoother, but not a big deal. And interesting to pick up right on that guy that we got to know in the intro. This show really doesn't spend time on battles. Like they just kind of cut to after. And that's a choice that has to be made depending on what the show calls for. Like last season, the choice to not show the battle between the Lannisters and the Starks, or the 2 battles I should say, was fine because of the way it was revealed that Robb screwed over Tywin Lannister and ended up besting Jaime. That was fine. And I think it's probably justified here as well. We've only gotten a little bit into the episode, so I don't know that for sure yet, but I'm just thinking ahead to the battles that we see across this show. I'm going to be thinking about whether or not it makes sense to be showing those battles at all, to be showing the extent of each of those battles, because I remember they're generally in one of the last 3 episodes of each season. Like this season is the Wildfire one, season 4 is Watchers on the Wall, season 5 is Hardhome, season 6 is Battle of the Bastards, etc. You get the point. So that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye out, whether the balance of not showing any battles throughout a season and then spending an entire episode on a battle, does that work? So that's something we'll find out later on down the line. And I'm sure it'll be different for each of the battles. Roose Bolton. I did not remember Robb meeting her this early on. I also didn't remember us meeting Roose Bolton this early on. I guess now I gotta keep an eye out for the way Robb's downfall comes and see if they write it in a way that actually makes sense to his character. Even though, like I've said before, we've already established that the phrase cannot be trusted. So let's see how they do with Roose Bolton and this situation.
I have no hatred for the lad.
That should help his foot grow back.
Have a surrender. The country would be at peace, just under the righteous hand of good King Joffrey. I have no desire to sit in the Iron Throne.
So who will?
I don't know.
You're fighting to overthrow a king, and yet you have no plan for what comes after.
First we have to win the war. The boy was lucky you were here.
He was unlucky that you were.
Interesting dual perspective there. 2 sides to the same conflict.
Killing you would send your brother a message.
But my mother insists on keeping you alive.
Again, we've seen that he doesn't listen to his mother before and that she can't control him, but he listens to her on this one single matter. The way his character is written is just really a disservice. It's a waste of potential. If Joffrey maybe expressed some understanding why they have to keep Sansa alive, instead of just saying, oh, my mother said we have to, then that would be a lot better. Also, where the hell is Tyrion?
What's the meaning of this?
Finally, damn.
Have you no regard for her honor? She should not fight her brother's battle, you half-wit.
Can't talk to me like that. King can do as he likes.
I'm not threatening the king, sir. I'm educating my nephew. I apologize for my nephew's behavior.
Now see, this is a moment in which Joffrey has his authority questioned in a public way, and it's done well because you saw the look on his face. You saw that he didn't want to have lost control of the situation to Tyrion. This is the sort of thing I was looking for back in episode 1 that we didn't get.
You want an end to this engagement?
I am loyal to King Joffrey. I want true love.
You may survive us yet.
And now we've had it verbalized that Sansa's doing whatever it takes to survive. Did we need him to verbalize that? No, but it's fine, and it helps for anyone who wasn't previously paying attention.
My uncle sent you. Harder. Harder. He won't need to get his money's worth.
And now that Joffrey's power has been undermined publicly by Tyrion, he's now undermining Tyrion. So this is a good example of Joffrey sort of fighting back. His sadism is reflected by his internal issues. It's too bad we didn't have anything like this before, because the sadism before was one-dimensional. This is now giving it dimension. I've talked about his character a lot, but just to sum it up, he'd shown different sides to him in season 1, though very sporadically and in very small isolated scenes. He then makes the decision to kill Ned, and from there on out, it's just a complete power trip, and it lacked depth. And finally, now we're getting that depth, because this isn't just sadism, he's undermining Tyrion by doing this. This explains the power trip, and they don't need to spell this out for us. We understand why he's doing this just through the scene itself. Even the subtle line of him saying, "My uncle sent you." That's plenty to let us know his thought process without having to tell us what he's going through. And so I think this is a great example of something that I was looking for earlier in the season to kind of tie in Joffrey's sadism with his own insecurities and his own power struggle that he's going through. So I'm glad to see it finally happening here.
Your Grace, if your uncle finds out...
Oh, I want him to find out. You will bring her to his chambers when you're finished, or the same thing will happen to you.
And that kind of ruins it for me, because they just spelled it out exactly what he's doing. I guess they're trying to overcompensate for the fact that some viewers just aren't going to get it, but I prefer when writers operate under the assumption that the audience is smart enough to follow the story. The content isn't bad. It makes sense for Roz to be like, "Oh, your uncle's going to find out." It makes sense for then Joffrey to be like, "Good, I want him to find out." But just the exact way this part of the scene unfolded, I'm not a fan. I think they could have done a better job without Joffrey having to spell out what his intentions are, and Roz also trying to make sure the situation doesn't get out of hand. That was a really good transition, because transitions aren't always about visuals, they're also about sound. They had her scream, and then the next transition was the horse's whinny, which sounded like the scream. Very subtle thing, but very well done.
You know I have the numbers. You know I'm marching on King's Landing. When I take the throne, you hope to retain your position.
Basic arithmetic favours the side with greater numbers.
If war were arithmetic, mathematicians would rule the world. I did notice your brother entering his grace's tent just now. And on the night of your wedding, who was by the king's side then? The marriage of a wealthy girl always breeds interest.
You've never married, have you? Oh, perhaps it's for the best. The whole notion of marriage seems to confuse you, so allow me to explain. My husband is my king, and my king is my husband.
Dang, get him. Marjorie Tyrell's character has been established very well so far, with her interactions with Renly in the last episode and this conversation with Littlefinger right now. She's obviously very intelligent, and she understands politics more than it seems people like Littlefinger even want to give her credit for. They also very briefly established Littlefinger and Renly's relationship last season, I believe in episode 4, when Littlefinger was like publicly taunting Renly about sleeping with Loras. So Renly knows that Littlefinger knows. And I was wondering if maybe Littlefinger was gonna use that. And obviously people speculate, as we saw earlier in this episode, the Lannister guards were talking about Loras and Renly. So I'm just wondering how that's gonna come into play in this episode, and if that's gonna come out in some way or have some sort of impact on the story. That first shot was interesting, but then this shot wasn't. They started in a weird place. Qarth, that's the name.
Only that the desert around their walls is called the Garden of Bones.
Again, this is one of those portions where it felt like they had no other place for Dany's part of the storyline in this episode. It's fine if they had no other choice. I'm just interested to see if we revisit Dany in the rest of this episode, or if that was just a one-time thing and we're not going to see her until the next episode. I have to imagine that they'll go to Qarth in this episode, and maybe by the end of the episode I'll be able to figure out if there could have been a better way to structure the episode, or if this was really the best possible way to do it.
The garden grows.
They didn't pay me for the hound. Joffrey, Cersei, they didn't pay the hound.
My husband trusted you, and you repaid our faith with treachery.
Do you want to see your girls again?
You have Arya too?
Both girls. But you know the Queen, and you know Joffrey.
Rob will never agree to those terms.
I'm not bringing these terms to him.
You think I keep secrets from my son?
Tyrion Lannister's goodwill.
I think Catelyn's conflict here is interestingly established. The way she sees things, Robb is never going to trade Jaime for Arya and Sansa, as we established in episode 1. But because of the price of Jaime Lannister, there could have been the possibility that Sansa and Arya would be unharmed. But now she's been presented with a box of Ned's remains, which is a reminder that maybe Sansa and Arya won't be safe with the Lannisters. So we now have a situation in which it's not like a clear-cut, oh, she should have done this and does this instead. This is a truly complex situation, and it's completely possible that either choice is the wrong decision depending on the situation. So well done there.
Where is the brotherhood?
Where is the Brotherhood? Because Ned sent Beric Dondarrion after the mountain in episode 6 of season 1. Was there like some off-screen skirmish that we didn't hear about in which the mountain prevailed and the Brotherhood escaped?
Joffrey, Cersei,
Please, Oliver, some food.
Oliver, the mountain.
Really like that development of her list.
Can that truly be you?
Who else might it be?
I think it's a little weird that there was no lead up to the fact that these two were going to be meeting. This seems like a really big moment for Stannis and Renly to come head to head. So for us to not even have heard a single inkling about it and for there to be no lead up to it is really weird.
He's the Lord's chosen, born amidst salt and smoke.
Do you have?
That's twice I've warned you. Your husband was a supporter of my claim, and you sit beside this pretender and chastise me. The Iron Throne is mine. All those that deny that are my foes.
The whole realm denies it from dawn to the wall. No one wants you for their king.
Come to me before dawn. I will grant you your old seat in the council.
The men holding those bolts of cloth will make me king.
We shall see, Renly.
And even though this exchange between them was very good, really well dialogue on both sides, great established conflict, all it does is show me the potential they had. Stannis is like one of those threats that comes in later, if that makes sense. Like I'm almost wondering if it wouldn't have been more interesting for the Battle of Blackwater to have been between Tyrion versus Renly and Robb's united front, and then Stannis takes out Renly in season 3 or even at the very end of season 2. Of course, these are big picture speculations that are hard to do when you haven't seen the rest of the show or you haven't rewatched the rest of the show. So I'm just going to throw that out there and then see how the rest of this plays out. I see we're back with Dany, and this is a great shot.
Qarth, greatest city that ever was.
The beauty of Qarth is legendary.
That felt very forced. It does not feel like Dany would have mispronounced that on her own. And I know she wants to impress them, but that was just not written very well in accordance with what the writers wanted to do with that little exchange.
Where I come from, guests are treated with respect, not insulted at the gates.
If by that she meant Westeros, girl, you have not been to Westeros.
We have received you.
Retreating in fear from a little girl is unbecoming of the greatest city that ever was or will be.
The discussion is over, Zaro, Zoan, Doxos. 13 have spoken.
I am one of the 13.
This scene is just not written very well. Way to address him by his full name for the audience's sake. Now, I remember that this guy, Zaro, Zoan, whatever, betrays Dany in the end.
Not from the village.
Where is the Brotherhood?
Well, isn't that lucky?
Are we so well manned that we can afford to discard able young bodies and skilled labourers? You have a trade? Smith, my lord.
Kneel, or I'll carve your lungs out, boy.
You'll do no such thing. This one's a girl, you idiot.
I'm screaming.
Dressed as a boy.
Safer to travel, my lord.
Smart. More than I can say for this lot.
I need a new cupbearer, my lord.
That was awesome. I really like the way Tywin operates. Like you can tell that's where Tyrion gets his intelligence. He gets it from Tywin, but he also gets it from having been in opposition to Tywin growing up and constantly having to prove himself. And they don't even have to draw that distinction for us. Like the scene is just well done, so these sort of thoughts just pour into your mind. And it helps that they cut to Tyrion right after. The one issue I had was them taking Gendry up to get tortured and him essentially being saved by the bell. I would rather them not have taken Gendry up at all, because then it wouldn't feel like Gendry was being saved by the writers. He should have been in the pen with Arya, and maybe somebody else should have been up there. Small thing to know, doesn't really affect the scene overall, because it played out so well, but just a tiny thing that would have improved the scene in my opinion.
Cersei must have great trust in you, allowing you into her chamber during the hour of the wolf. No more warnings for me, sir?
You will withdraw these filthy accusations.
Have you ever given any thought to what King Joffrey will have to say when he finds out you've been bedding his mother? Stay close to her side. Keep her trust. No one ever need know. I want to know what Cersei is doing. I'll give her paisa. I could swear that I had not harmed a single hair on his head, but that would not, strictly speaking, be true.
Because he cut his hair off. Great scene. Well executed. Extremely believable that Tyrion was able to pull that off.
Cleaner ways don't win wars.
See, he just hasn't learned that yet, though. For him to jump right into the corruption, I can understand Stannis maybe feeling threatened by Renly, especially after that conversation they had. I personally would have put the conversation later in the season so that we could get more out of Renly before he gets killed. Because I buy that Stannis would kill Renly. I buy that he would be threatened enough to use magic. I just don't like that the writers did it here. What a bunch of nonsense. The magic in this universe literally has no rules. It's just a poorly developed magic system, which I can get more into as we encounter more magic in the series. I mean, who is this Lord of Light that gives Melisandre magical abilities to do crazy stuff like this? Do we ever find out? The Stannis and Renly showdown just felt like it came in the wrong portion of the season. I knew it was weird that their conversation had absolutely no lead up to it, like we didn't hear anything about it since after Melisandre very easily seduced him to the dark side. At least Renly's death wasn't as early as I remembered, because I remembered it being in like episode 2. But I think the reason I thought that was because so little happens in Renly's story. Like they've set up interesting dynamics that won't truly be realized since they decided to kill him off this early. The tension between Renly and Stannis is something that deserved to be built out for a significant portion of the season before coming to a head. It would be a lot more interesting to see Robb and Renly versus the Lannisters versus Stannis. And this is a problem that we see again in season 8, where the writers had multiple foes that could have come up against each other all at once for a climactic showdown, but instead they did it one by one by one, and not in the right order. Renly's death in the next episode is quite literally Deus Ex Machina. Like it's actually a god coming in to save Stannis in a fight that he can't win. And while the concept isn't inherently bad since it showcases that Stannis is not a good guy and is willing to do unethical, corrupt things in order to get what he wants, positioning this to happen this early on felt like the writers were just like, oh, we don't want to let Robb and Renly actually have a chance against the Lannisters. We don't actually want a complex triangle with 3 equal and opposite forces, so let's just have this magical demon baby kill Renly and effectively eliminate Robb Stark from getting to Joffrey this season. This whole show is like a massive game of keep away, where the writers try to keep the Starks away from the Lannisters so that they don't ever come up against each other in battle. After season season 1. Like, I'm wondering, did they really orchestrate all this so that Robb would then be even more exposed to Walder Frey and Roose Bolton's betrayal? Because you can plan things out ahead of time, and that in and of itself is not a problem, but this is inorganic writing. The fact that they just had Stannis and Renly confront each other in this episode without any lead up makes it feel super inorganic. Like, surely y'all could have developed the build up to that confrontation, which then leads to the death of Renly further on down the line. Surely you could have found a way to write it so that even though Robb and Renly do team up, they don't win in the situation. Because we have Blackwater coming up, and instead of that being Tyrion versus Stannis, they could have had that be Tyrion versus Robb and Renly, and maybe also versus Stannis. Like, maybe Stannis gets involved somehow. There's just so many ways that they could have gotten the result that they wanted that would have felt organic, and it wouldn't have felt like the writers were purposely trying to cripple Robb Stark and give the bad guys a magical upper hand. But the episode overall wasn't bad at all. Apart from this premature stuff and the really weirdly written scene between Dany and the people at Qarth, it was mostly a good episode. We didn't have any wall shenanigans, so I have to imagine that'll come up next episode. Next episode we'll obviously see Renly's death play out. We'll probably have some sort of confrontation between Joffrey and Tyrion after what Joffrey did this episode. And Cersei wasn't in this episode, so she'll probably come up in the next episode as well. I know we're gonna have Catelyn send Jaime with Brienne, which I'm wondering if that's something she does as a result of Renly dying and her feeling like they don't have another option. But sending Jaime with Brienne is also not a plot point that I liked in this show, so we'll see how that plays out. This episode also didn't have Theon, so I'm sure he'll be back as well. It looks like a lot could go down in the next episode, so I will see you then.